What's going on, everybody? Welcome or welcome back to the Mama Saga. This is your number one place to come for all sorts of Marvel / Disney Plus reactions, comic book sagas. I've been a comic book fan since 1986, more specifically a Marvel comic book fan since 1986. I've also been a lawyer since 1998, so especially when it comes to one of my most favorite characters, my favorite female character, She-Hulk, attorney at law, well, I can definitely break down not just stuff that's happened with the character in the Disney Plus series versus the comic books a lot of the times. I can also break down, especially during these live reactions and the replays, I can break down just how accurate the folks at Marvel Studios are, their writers and such, in terms of bringing in what the law would really look like on a civil matter or a criminal matter, putting aside that it involves a superhero or superpowered, beings. So you definitely get kind of the best of both worlds from somebody like me, especially when it comes to She-Hulk stuff. So, although, that being said, this particular episode called The Retreat, which is episode 7, we only have 2 more left for this first season of She-Hulk. This particular episode didn't really have too much legal stuff going on. There is 1 or 2 nuances that I'll point out. This was more about moving along the character arc of Jennifer Walters now that she's She-Hulk further along, so that she can kind of reconcile any sort of loose ends within her own interior journey and struggle. Because, I would think the last 2 episodes is going to be a lot more action. We're definitely going to see the Hulk King, who may be the leader. Again, spoilers. I put it down below. I'll say it again. This is not a spoiler-free review. This is Spoiler City. Okay, so if you haven't, let me throw out the disclaimer. If you have not watched any of the She-Hulk series on Disney Plus, or you haven't watched all of the episodes up to and including episode 7, and a Spoiler City review like this is going to ruin your experience when you do go to watch that 7th episode of, She-Hulk, then fine. Consider yourself warned. It's totally cool. You can circle back to the Mama Saga later. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure that you turn that red button gray, right? Because at least weekly, more when my schedule as a lawyer allows it, I'll be here doing live stream reactions with replays and or edited videos covering anything Marvel, anything Disney Plus that's Marvel related. And, I can also talk about just plain straight up the Marvel comic book saga outside of Marvel Studios, outside of Disney Plus. So let me just say all that before I get any further into episode 7, which is called The Retreat, where Jen visits Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination's wellness retreat. She meets new friends, she sure does, and she gets in touch with her inner She-Hulk, which again sounds like this is kind of like cushy, and how much fighting is there going to be? We get a little physicality going on in this episode. It's not anything too crazy, but I think if they want the entire first season of She-Hulk to stand as a complete, fully fleshed out, season, they do have to start buttoning up the biggest worst, like, parts of her internal journey. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's 2 journeys, and there's one that's interior and the other one that's exterior, which might bring some of the interior stuff along. When you're doing really nuanced storytelling, you are going to focus on the 2 journeys that the hero has. Everybody likes to talk about Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey, and they only tend to focus on the one out of the 2 journeys. So here, I think this episode, The Retreat, serves as not just, it does move the plot a little bit further forward. It does. It does bring in more of the Marvel supernatural, and it has a wink and a nod to, like, Blade related things. Okay, if you know Blade from Marvel Comics. and we'll get to that in a minute. But I think it's important for them to button up as best as possible the second of the two heroes' journeys that Joseph Campbell would say she's on. The internal struggle has to be at least as largely resolved as possible, because the last two episodes aren't just going to involve Daredevil for at least one, but things are going to come to a head with the whole King, and I'm going to guess the leader. And that's going to pull plot threads forward into what's ultimately going to be, well, a couple different ways pulling She-Hulk forward. She's part of the Avengers. She definitely spends a chunk of her time in the Marvel comic book saga amongst the Avengers. So we're kind of slowly but surely going into phase 5 and phase 6. We're going to see the Avengers one way or another start to reassemble. We're going to definitely have the Thunderbolts, and they're going to be the end of, what is it, phase 5. But by the time you get to phase 6, we are going to have the two-parter that's going to wrap up largely the multiverse saga, right? So this is probably not news to you. You know, we're going to have the Kang Dynasty as part 1, and then Secret Wars as the end of the whole multiverse saga, the end of phases 5 and 6. And those are both Avengers outfits. But before you get there, you get the Thunderbolts, who are kind of like, you know, Avengers stand-ins while the Avengers continue to assemble. Now, jumping back to the point I was originally making, you do have She-Hulk, who's going to join in with the Avengers. Why do you think in the credit scenes you got, you know, the theme song from the Avengers being mixed in there? She definitely, in the comic book saga, is a member of the Avengers for quite a stretch. And she's going to probably, very likely, in phases 5 and 6, merge into the Avengers, at least for a time. But I do think she's also going to have her part to play, however big or small it's going to be, in Captain America 4 New World Order. I'm glad that they're not going to do a politics-laden thing. I think we're all fatigued on politics one way or the other. We don't discuss politics here, by the way. I know that with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that was one of the subplots going on. But putting that aside, I like the fact that New World Order is going to have the leader as the big bad of that movie. And the leader is part of the Hulk, She-Hulk whole mix, that end of the franchise. And you can tell that, you know, you've got that going on. As of definitely episode 6 of She-Hulk, you knew that something having to do with the leader was going on, that the Wrecking Crew, going back a couple of episodes more, were trying to get blood samples from the She-Hulk, if nothing else, because that was something that the leader definitely was interested in having, going all the way back to the original Hulk movie. So it's hard to have Hulk, She-Hulk things going on without the leader there. And the leader is going to be the big bad of Captain America 4. So while I know we're going to see She-Hulk for some point mixed up in that movie as well. So that's really good. They are still laying the groundwork, and they certainly moved the plot forward, the big overarching plot, the main hero's journey that She-Hulk goes on, Joseph Campbell style. However, they do have the two heroes' journey, one internal and one external. The internal one got wrapped up very, very nicely here. So I love how they handle the first 4 or 5 minutes of this episode, where there's like no talking done at all. It's all character acting, it's physical acting, the facial expressions, you know, the music kind of helps. And then what we see superimposed on the screen sometimes with the text, without saying a word, they're doing very effective storytelling and moving things along. I really didn't think there was much of a drag going on during the first 4 or 5 minutes where nobody speaks anything aloud. We open up to Jen being in her bathroom and getting ready for the day, and Josh texts her saying, "Can't wait to see you." She gets ready. She's sitting at the breakfast table taking a shot of vodka. I'm like, it is daytime, girl. Why? It's morning. But I guess it's a shot of liquid courage, because it turns out that as she's tweaking some stuff on the way out the door, she's meeting up Josh for a date. He doesn't come in, so he's playing the gentleman. But I guess she has everything tweaked just in case. My husband and I have been married for years, and we dated for quite a time before that. But I remember how it was like, just in case he comes in, he shouldn't come in on the first date. I want to act like a good girl. I want this to work out. But just in case he sees anything, but doesn't come in, he just sees it from the door being open, let alone maybe he'll come in really quick and come out. I want everything to look just so. She's got her shot of liquid courage. She tidies up the place. She goes out on a date with him. And you can tell the very next part of that scene, it's dark out. So they've spent the whole day together. And they're getting some tasty treats sitting outside of a local food truck. They're having a good time. They're laughing and stuff like that. But again, it's like pantomiming it all. There's nothing being spoken aloud for us as the audience to see. We're just voyeurs on their dating over the course of, I'm going to guess, at least a week. He comes back to her unit to drop her off at the end of the day because she went in his car. You saw that. And it's all awkward. It's their first date. It went well. So they're smiling, good eye contact. But do they shake hands? Do they hug? They kind of do a little bit of both. He does not come into her home. He does not try to come in. He's just a big, smiley gentleman, right? So you wonder, is this too good to be true? Is he going to be somebody that, is part of the whole hulking plot? Is he otherwise someone that is actually going to legit date Jen, but then he's going to end up the damsel in distress? You're not sure. So then we do a scene change where we're back at Goodman Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway, GLK and H. They're in a meeting room. It's full. Jen's in She-Hulk form. She's dressed in a suit. And she's kind of half paying attention to the meeting, and then the camera pans under the table to kind of show us Josh's text. He's got an idea for a food truck. It's kind of gross, fries dipped in a milkshake. And he's like, are you in? My family owns Joe's Dairy Bar and Grill. They're actually a big TikTok influencer. They have like 820,000 fans or followers on TikTok alone. We've got like 13,000 plus folks following us on our page, and like another 3,300 people, in a Facebook group. And we have a huge email list too. So we do really good with content marketing. If that's something you or somebody is into, make sure that you subscribe to the Stacey Storino channel. I did relate that channel to this channel. If you go to like the main page for my YouTube channel for the Mama Saga. I also linked it to Joe's Dairy Bar just in case you like food. We show a lot of behind the scenes, how it's made, all sorts of different cool things that we do, tips, tricks, and techniques. If you're going to have the type of cuisine that we serve out at one of our competitors, how to know if the oil is bad or the ice cream gets too grainy. It's like really cool. And I'm mentioning that only because we like to be creative at Joe's Dairy Bar and Grill, but we don't do fries dipped in a milkshake. You can let me know in the comments down below if you feel so inclined as to whether or not that's something you're interested in, because in all fairness, and then I'll get right back to She-Hulk, we will put together specials to kind of test things out. If the specials really do really well, we'll run them more for more than 1 or 2 weeks. If they do super well, we end up just putting it on the menu. One of the things that we did kind of as a goof a couple years ago when people were doing all sorts of mashup things, but it was nothing my husband and I would eat or a lot of the staff, we put together a hamburger cooked to order, all the usual toppings if you want them, like lettuce, tomato, onion, that sort of thing, pickles if you want. And it had chipotle mayo, jalapenos, and of all things, mozzarella sticks. And so it's like one of those big stacked burgers. Chipotle mayo was huge. Mashup things were huge. We did it kind of as a goof. It's all stuff we otherwise sold separately. So we're like, whatever, we're not going to waste any money if nobody gets it. And it became such a raging hit that we still carry it on our menu today. And it still earns its keep today. We take things off the menu if they, end up really stalling out. And that's the JDB King. Gross to me, but lots of people love it. So those are just my thoughts. You let me know what you think about fusion blend cuisine or French fries dipped in milkshakes. But anyway, Jen texts back some emojis that show that she's up for the challenge. She's clearly up for it. We have a scene change. They're at a fine restaurant from the look of it. So, they're starting to upgrade their dates. I'm not clear how long they've been dating at this point, but they've gone on several dates, right? And so when they show you with him dropping her off, he's still the gentleman. He's taking her out. He's dropping her off at her front door. Jen, this time, because they're getting closer, she leans in and he kind of seems receptive for a kiss, and so does she. But then she kind of thinks better of it and then just politely goes inside. And you can tell that she's pausing after the door is shut. And she's like, should I have kissed him? But then she's like brushing her teeth. She's in her pajamas and he's already texting her. What are you doing on Thursday? So clearly, the next scene, they're at that Thursday date. They're outside. I guess they're watching some sort of drive-in movie thing or whatever. She's looking at him. He's making goo-goo eyes at her. They're back at the door again. He drops her off. And this time she's kissing him and she lets him stay inside for the night. So when the scene, it doesn't really change. Like, we're in her room still. We're in her apartment, but at this point, we're in her bedroom. It's morning. She's asleep in the bed. And the text says Friday. So it's definitely letting you know yesterday was their Thursday date. This is the very next Friday. And again, up to about this point, nobody's spoken anything loud that the audience can hear. It's really good storytelling showing the progression throughout the dates of Jennifer and the relationship, and it looks like she's really falling for this guy and everything. So as Jen's getting ready that morning, Josh texts her again, and his text reads, "That was fun. I can't stop smiling." Jen doesn't text him back. She's smiling to herself. She starts to text something like, "What you up to keep the conversation going?" But then she ends up deleting it. And I guess the thought process was she didn't want to seem too desperate. And let's just see what happens from here on out. I don't want to come on too strong. So at that point, I guess well played. Although I think if she had sent the text, it wouldn't have been the worst thing to do. What you up to is pretty upbeat, non-committal. She doesn't have to profess her love to him. Then we have a scene change. We're back at GLK&H. We're in Jen's office more specifically, and Nikki's like, "Jen, you didn't tell me that you were nominated for Female Lawyer of the Year. Does this mean that we get to go to a gala?" And Jen's still texting away, and she doesn't really answer. So really quickly, I guess they do go to a gala in the next episode or one of the last two episodes that we have now. We've only got 8 and 9 left, and the season is over. But so we're going to see her in that evening gown dress that you've no doubt seen in some of the trailers leading up to now. So they're sowing the seeds for that, but it does not happen in this episode. So then Nikki's afraid that she's sucked into her phone because she's at the intelligentsia site. And Jen's like, no, very confidently. She says, "I don't care what a bunch of losers say about me online." Like, good for her. That's the best response. Then she adds, "They can't even say it to my face because they know they'll get all Hulk smashed." And it's like, Hulk smash is a catchphrase that Hulk himself came out with how many movies ago. So it's kind of cool. And then she admits that she's just waiting for a text from Josh. And then Nikki makes the point, if you're not, this could be something that men or people do, but with women, it's like a big deal. You don't want to come off like psycho just because you slept with a dude, especially if you like him and you want to keep seeing him. You don't want to come on too strong. You don't want to say nothing. It's like a delicate tightrope that you have to walk, right? So Nikki does make the point that a lot of women at least tend to say to one another, if not just themselves, you kind of want to wait roughly half a day before you go on texting. Nobody says not to ever text again, or he absolutely has to make the next move. You just don't want to seem too desperate, right? So she literally says, you want to wait about 12 hours before you text Josh. It does feel icky, but you don't want to do anything stupid. And I agree, that's a very sensitive point in a relationship with someone, especially if you care to continue that relationship. You don't want to do anything that will spook them out, you know? And they probably feel the same way with you. It's a very delicate time. I think this was very well written. So, you know, when my husband and I dated, that was the same thing. And later on, when we got serious and engaged, we would go back and look back at like things we did when we first dated. And it's so funny to see like all the same concerns that we both had at different pivotal points in our relationship. So again, I think the writing is really good, not just on the legal level, but like on the personal level and then the overall storytelling level. You know, then you can wreck things if you're not too careful. So no one wants to come off as desperate. So then we have another scene change, and Jen's watching the phone still. You know, she's stuck to it, and we get text on screen that tells us, the viewers, we're now on the next day. This is Saturday. The phone is dark, nothing. Jen's not smiling. You can tell she's getting stressed out now as she looks at the phone. She's not smiling, and the phone's by her as she's eating breakfast, and it's dark. The phone is in front of her as she's stretching and doing yoga, and it's dark, right? Then we see her watching TV, and it's like the Muppet movie, and Miss Piggy's in jail, and she's pacing back and forth, and then she gets so jacked because she's so mad and frustrated that she ends up being able to Hulk out as Miss Piggy. She gains super strength somehow, and she bends open the bars with just like the force of her rage. So, and you can tell that this is kind of how Jen feels, period, whether she's She-Hulk or not. She's very frustrated. She picks up the phone to look at it. It's still dark. Nobody has texted her, not even Josh. So she just throws it at the, you know, floor. And now she's in bed. So they have moved us to the end of Saturday. She's aggravated. The phone brightens up with a text, but it's not Josh, and it's like, whatever. So the scene changes. We're now on Sunday. We're told it's Sunday. The text on screen announces that it's Sunday. Jen wakes up in bed only because the phone's ringing, and it's Chuck, Emil Blonsky's parole officer. So Jen acknowledges the fact that if Chuck's calling her early on a Sunday morning, that's not good news. So I will say here, again, I'm not a criminal attorney, but I have friends on both sides of the equation who are. You know, if someone's on parole, they do get an assigned parole officer that they have to check in with every week, whatever the court stipulates them to do or not do. When they do their check-in, the parole officer has to be told this stuff, document this stuff. Parole officers can also do online checks and other things to make sure that what you're telling them is the truth. And then if you are on like house arrest with one of those ankle bracelets or something, if the tech gets all wonky or janky, either because there's a legitimate glitch or it needs to be replaced for servicing, or there's a fear that it's being tampered with, there will be notifications that are sent to the parole officers and whomever, and then they will be put wise to that. And they may call the attorney. Parole officers keep the contact information for the last known attorney assigned to that parolee. So that's Jennifer. So that's why she's getting the call, because Chuck says, we've got a malfunction at least on Blonsky's inhibitor. And she's like, did he turn into the Abomination? And he's like, we don't know. Chuck's like, now I have to go up to that wackadoo ranch of his. And he grimaces. And that just makes me think of his 7, you know, soulmates that gave him all the money and collectively bought a plot for him to go live on. And as you might recall from the credit scenes from that episode, they were left crying in the dust as he drove off. Is Blonsky a villain? I will tell you, especially after having sat through episode 7, how they're portraying him right now is that at best he could be an anti-hero. He does have some self-centeredness to him, but he does have some good elements to him, and he is good for something besides becoming Abomination and like Hulk smashing, or if you know, whatever. So she said, I will check in with him to check in with her client, which of course she can do. But Chuck's like, look, I got to go there. I'm feeling uncomfortable. We don't have the financial resources to send a squad of, uniforms with me for security. I'm going to guess the Department of Damage Control, because he doesn't say cops versus DODC, but that'll be my guess. So he says, I was hoping you'd meet me there, just in case. So, she understands, but the funny part is he's sitting there clearly eating cake for breakfast and then has the audacity to say, I figure my chances of staying out of the ICU is much greater if I have a Hulk with me. Dude, if you were so worried about, staying out of the ICU, maybe you don't eat cake at all, let alone for freaking breakfast on a Sunday. You want your cake with the side of angioplasty, that's on you. So then we do a scene change. Jen's, driving to the retreat and she's checking her phone, and clearly there's still nothing. And there's nothing from Josh. She's got it open to her conversation with Josh and nothing's showing up. So Chuck's already at the gate of, the ranch is called Summer Twilight. So I have to do some research. I just finished watching that episode and sat down live, right? So that name is probably means something. It's probably an Easter egg. But as I sit here, that one I don't know. So I have to look that up and maybe refresh my recollection or learn something. And then I'll share it. But he's trying to enter the code to get the gates open. Now, if you're like, how would he have the code? To be honest, if you've got a parole officer, depending upon the facts and circumstances, they're going to have a key to your apartment. They're going to know the password or the code to access certain things. Okay. So again, I'm not a criminal attorney. I'm a civil one, but I have friends on both sides of the equation. This is not completely out of the realm of reality. But as he's trying to get the gates open and they start to open, Jen's just really fixated on the fact that Josh hasn't texted back. And she just drives by and Chuck's like, hello, and he's got to catch up with her. Her car, of course, is kind of like a Hulk green, which, I'm like, oh, why not? So once they both get there, they're out of the cars and they're about to go confront Blonsky. Chuck asks her to Jolly Green herself, which means Jolly Green Giant. I'm like, oh, geez. She's been known in the comics as the Jade Giantess, but Jolly Green, come on. So she corrects him to say the proper term is hulking out. You want me to hulk out? So she becomes She-Hulk. And then they go talk to Blonsky, who's kind of like, he's all like just kind of laying there like a big old like sack of potatoes. You can tell he's not looking nasty, but he's not looking pleased that he's got to deal with his parole officer and he's got to be asked about his inhibitor and stuff. So it's played with just enough believability that you think, it's an inconvenience and it's yucky to think that you're still being treated like a criminal. I want to go on with my life. But you're also like, what's up with the inhibitor, buddy? Because you've seen, no doubt, in some of the trailers, leading up to the show even dropping, that there is a point where Blonsky's in the Abomination form wearing a white t-shirt and high-fiving everybody at some sort of life coach kind of event that clearly he's leading. And so he's got his ranch. He's running his retreat. You don't see him become the Abomination in this episode, though. There's no hint that he's done that either. So maybe he hasn't, or maybe they're just doing enough that they don't want to give you a poker's tell yet about what he's really doing or not doing. So they're checking Blonsky's inhibitor. It hasn't been tampered with. It's just got some sort of legit malfunctioning that Chuck's readjusting. And while he's doing it, Blonsky just calmly explains that he got a jolt from an electric fence. But his favorite chicken on his ranch, Princess Silk Feather, got stuck. So he wanted to rescue the chicken so she didn't die. The name is funny enough unto itself. The fact that he's got chickens and he's kind of like homesteading is even funnier. It is a ranch, but he's clearly still taking care of the animals there. So it's kind of really funny to me. Homesteading is such a thing, even in the state of California. He's definitely in on that trend to some degree, right? So then Chuck announces he's recalibrated the inhibitor. All's well. He is pleased. Blonsky does not look really like thrilled to even be dealing with this, like I said, but there's a smile on his face. His eyes are just kind of flat. Chuck is very nervous. He's been off the jump. He goes peeling out of there, leaving Jennifer to fend for herself. But, Blonsky's not pissy or anything. So, good eye contact between the two of them. All is well. He walks her out to her car, and just some kindly chit chat. And then two super powered humans or beings are duking it out, and they slam into her car. And then there's all this smoke. And Jen hulks out, pulls what ends up being Man-Bull off her car. And she goes in and out of She-Hulk form. She goes back to Jen form. And Blonsky informs her, she's like, what the heck is this going on? Because Blonsky doesn't seem thrown. So I'm sure that's why she's asking him. And he says, it's just two men at my retreat working out their resentments in a safe environment. Her car wasn't supposed to be there, in all fairness. They hadn't planned on that. So you have the Man-Bull, and you have who's ultimately really known as the Matador, Alejandro, though. And they both apologize. And she's like, apologize to my Prius Prime. It's not just a Prius, it's a Prius Prime, I do, with money. Now, Man-Bull's the one whose body really went flying into the car. And he's like very smoothly agreeing, no problem. I will take care of your car. We'll get a tow truck, whatever. And he credits Blonsky as being responsible for teaching him how to control his anger and handle bad situations responsibly. Now, this is kind of a callback to the first, episode, really, where she's interviewing non-party witnesses on behalf of Blonsky for his parole hearing. And they're all saying how he's helped this one with their marriage, or the other one has been a witness to him having like coaching circles and improving other people's lives and not just his own. So this now is a callback and then a pull forward to Man-Bull saying, and he's been helping me too. And so because of him, I have no problem taking responsibility for the damage to your car and paying for it. Then we've got the Matador who, because this is a comedy, we have to inject some comedy in here. And he says he's not a Matador. He gives her his name. He's Alejandro. I'm not a Matador. I know what this looks like. And I know I'm dealing with a Man-Bull, but, this would be cliche. I'm actually a swashbuckler. Okay, like there's a huge difference. The Jen doesn't really care. She goes, all this is unnecessary backstory, which is funny because, of course, it's a comic book or it's a show based upon a comic book. We always have backstory when we're introducing characters in comics, even if it's brief. So it's funny. It's kind of fourth wall-ish, but it's not. I love what she does with the fourth wall later on in this episode. I'll get to that. But she's mad because she doesn't want to go home. She wants to go home and she can't go home now. She's gotta, how's she supposed to drive off? It's Sunday. I want at least part of my weekend. I had to come here for work. I want to go. So Blonsky's very calmly, Emil Blonsky's very calmly suggesting to her that, I grant it. This is inconvenient what's happened to you, but life is presenting you with an opportunity, right? Her knackered Prius Prime, don't forget where he comes from. So he's using, some Aussie type terms there. The knackered Prius Prime, not Aussie, but you know what I mean. The knackered Prius Prime is her teacher, actually. There's a gift to be extracted from the garbage of this experience, is what he's saying. She needs to slow down and take a beat. But she's grumping that basically he's said nothing about nothing, that basically he's word salading his way through trying to make lemonade out of lemons. Like he's trying to come off like some wizened teacher. And this is what a lot of people often say about life coaches who are trying to make a point that might be very legitimate about things, but sometimes if they say stuff that's too kind of like broad brushstroke-ish, it may be applicable. But sometimes folks are right to be critical of life coaches because maybe they're not 100% legit. And then sometimes if, some life coaches are very legit, and sometimes they're getting unnecessary criticism. So, the show has made enough of a point up till now that if nothing else, when Blonsky's wearing his life coaching hat, he is effective with humans and superpowered beings, both. So she's kind of being a little fresh to him, and maybe he doesn't deserve it, but they're also making a global statement about how some people feel about life coaches. So they're walking the property. He's talking her down off her ledge. They're going to get a tow truck, relax. And you can tell that it is absolutely huge. Okay. And it's very stately and stuff like that. And Jennifer's soaking all this in while she's trying to desperately get, reception on her cell phone. Because my God, have I heard from Josh yet? And then Blonsky is telling her that actually this is fantastic news. Don't be too mad. Yes, we're getting a tow truck. It's coming. But the fact that it's going to take a little while, again, you need to take a beat. You need to relax. That's something that's very important for you to do. Just look at you. You're so intense. Your face is in your phone. And she's just like, no, I don't care. I don't want to relax. Now, I'm going to very quickly say, having been an attorney since 1998, I've gone through dating, engagement, married, mother, and stuff like that. But still, your personal life and your business life, you are always on, okay? It is a very punishing corporate culture to work for a firm, no matter how nice and welcoming it is. Just nature of the beast, right? And then obviously some are worse than others. You can always be on. So whether it's she's looking for a text from Josh, or she wants to talk to Nikki either as a friend or as her paralegal, because attorneys work weekends. According to the American Bar Association, the average attorney works somewhere between 60 to 80 hours billable a week. That doesn't even include your commutation time, going to the bathroom. Like, that's the billable hours that you put in. So we're always on. And, now that we do a lot of work remotely, as many folks do, it's like if I don't have my phone, I may as well not have my right arm. Right. So Blonsky's just, you need to disconnect. You're desperately, the harder you're trying to push yourself into work, into phone, into dating, the more life's telling you no, and it's for a reason. And she doesn't want to accept this. And he turns out to be right. Now, whether he's right because he's making a very wise point, or whether he's right because a broken watch tells the right time twice a day, that's up to you, the viewer, to decide. But he is making a very legitimate point, right? Hey, Romney, what's going on? Hey, Mama, what's up? Did you finish watching the episode? Usually you do. What do you think? I think, like I said earlier, Romney, there's Joseph Campbell talks about two different heroes' journeys. The one that everybody knows is the external things that you fight with, and maybe you learn some lessons along the way as you win. But that's more the external journey than there's the internal journey. This one kind of tidies up her internal journey and her self-acceptance of being both Jen and She-Hulk, and not having to try to diminish one at the for the benefit of the other, that she can really balance herself out and accept the whole of herself. The last two episodes are going to be, so the internal hero's journey is largely wrapped up, just for this season to be well contained, because we only have 2 more episodes. The last 2 episodes is going to finish out, I would guess, the external hero's journey that most people know about. And I do think it's going to totally tie into Captain America 4 New World Order, because of the whole leader and the hulking stuff. And then, of course, she's going to go off to be part of the Avengers, because they're reassembling the Avengers slowly but surely. And it's really part of her character journey and arc in the comic book Saga. So it's kind of a must that they pull her in, and she's going to be involved in Secret Wars and such. So Blonsky is taking her to another part of his huge campus where only Platinum Circle members go. So this is kind of like a life coachy kind of phrase, but hey, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to monetize somehow, right? So he obviously has different levels of, work that he can do for and with somebody, and Platinum Circle is the best of the best, right? So you're obviously paying him more. And it's a ceremonial sweat area. So sweat lodges are very much part of a lot of different coaching scenarios, and or therapy scenarios. I'm not telling you that you can't have a psychiatrist who might ask you to do this sort of thing, although Blonsky's not that. Life coaches are more often going to have you do all sorts of different modalities to kind of get in touch with whatever you need to get in touch with. Sweat lodges can be one of those things. They don't have to be. I don't know how like wink and a nod this really is, but when you're looking at sweat lodges, The Secret was a huge thing back in 2007 through 2009-10. One of the big talking heads in the original The Secret like movie, if you will, he got in trouble for running a sweat lodge where some people died in there. So that's not funny, but I'm wondering if they're kind of doing like a dark wink and a nod to that when we're dealing with the sweat lodge. But he lets her know that that's a place that Platinum Circle members go to. They're in the sweat lodge, and they can merge the past, the present, and build a better future by being in there. They throw it all in quote unquote one bin, and then they can sort things out better. Because again, they're kind of being, it's almost like a sensory deprivation tank, and then you're kind of just sitting there with your thoughts. So like he does what he can physically to facilitate you having to zone in on whatever's bugging you most, which is a good purpose of a sweat lodge when done right. I'm not saying they're all death traps. But you have to deal with what you're doing internally. You could just sit there and like waste the whole time. But if you go in there to do the work, you can get the results as long as the sweat lodge is run safely and responsibly. So Jen's like, no, I don't need a sweat lodge. All I need is a desk and a place to work. And he goes, well, we don't do that. I purposely wanted this retreat to be a place where you can't really get reception on a device. You come here to do the work. That means I don't want you distracted by things. So how many people are addicted to social media or playing around on their devices, or work and or the usual outside world play can distract you? He's right. However, you also wonder if this isn't just a facade, so that whatever he's doing there, it's a lot harder for the outside world to see. So we know he somehow takes off the inhibitor bracelet or can turn it on and turn it off. Maybe he just wasn't as careful, or he has to like nuance things so that he doesn't get caught again. I don't know, but we know from the trailer footage he's definitely going and doing some sort of event and high-fiving everybody, and he's the Abomination. So you wonder if this isn't a 2-for-1, where yes, it's what he says it is. You come there to work and they want you to concentrate. Whether you sit in the hot sweat lodge or not, they're taking things off the playing field, so you are just focusing on like scoring the touchdown you need to score. True, but he can also be using that as a way to hide other things, like him turning into the Abomination when he wants to or needs to. And Jen's like, that's cool, but that's not how I want to spend my day, dude. And he's like, it may not be how you want to spend your day, but it is in this snapshot of time how you need to spend your day. Clearly, you're not in a teachable mood right now, so I'm going to go off, but I'm here if you need me. And then Jen just, it's a 2-for-1 point that they're making in this next scene, where she's just going around, and it is ginormous. Those 7 sister wives or soul wives or whatever, they spent a lot of money. This is a huge, huge piece of property. And she also, so it's kind of funny that it's that huge, and these women threw all this money at somebody that they're not even legally married to. That's one thing for comedy, and they are making the point. He's got a huge facility. The other point that's funny but kind of not is she's going all over the place and she can't get any reception. So like, yeah, again, it's the dual point. well, I don't want people coming here and getting reception. They can't do the work that they came here to do, that they're paying me to do. But on the flip side, this place is a huge facility and the outside world can't see what's going on or reach it. Mm-mm. So she finally gets to a wooden building on the property. And then boom, she kind of gets like a bit of a signal. So she goes in, and Blonsky's sitting there with several of his paid students. There's a poster behind him or to the side of him that says achieve everything. Okay, yeah, this is a work session and that's like an establishing shot, but it is kind of like a very broad brushstroke statement, achieve everything. Like that kind of keeps the life coach joke thing going. And so you have Alejandro the Matador and Manbull there. You also are introduced to Porcupine and Saracen, who thinks he's a vampire. So this is kind of like the Blade cut in. He's a vampire like Blade is a vampire. Vampire decides vampire. Blade decides in his Marvel comic book journey that he wants to use his powers for good, and he's a badass about it. This character, I can't remember if he's a real comic book character or not. Again, this is my first viewing, so I do have to go back and kind of look him up. I don't know if he's a new creation for the series or what, but it's important for two reasons. We are getting the Blade movie, so they keep kind of putting down little, seeds to remind you. Vampires are a thing in this universe. Blade is coming. But also I think the timing is important for when this episode first dropped. It's October in like seconds. And that's also when Werewolf by Night comes out. And it's also a good way to tie into, getting even deeper into the Midnight Suns, like dark world kind of universe where there's going to be vampires. There's going to be at some point Ghost Rider. There's going to be, Werewolf by Night, of course. Miss Bloodstone is coming. And Man-Thing is going to be there. Let's see. So it is important that we see him there, that the episode drops when it drops, what the next project is that we get exposed to. We're all ready for this. Oh, and of course, then there's Mephisto, who this series also introduced you to thanks to Madison, right? So, you can't have the Midnight Suns without Mephisto. I've made that point, not only in live stream reactions, but in edited videos also in the past, a couple of them now. But still, Jennifer's like, nope, I don't need to sit here. I don't need to do this kind of work. I'm going to go off in a corner where I can have a tiny little bit of reception and maybe I can get something done. Manbull. So, Blonsky's like, whatever, let's continue to do our work. And Manbull and Alejandro the Matador are clearly in a very unhealthy, codependent relationship with one another. And so talking about how they trigger one another is really funny. But, everybody's trying to be really serious. Porcupine is in his suit. And he's got everyone walled off because he's in the suit. So everybody sooner or later is saying to him, take off the faceplate, get out of the suit, be vulnerable with us. And Blonsky says that's a great step towards vulnerability. And he's like, I get it, but I'm not ready right now. And then another person comes in who was from the Wrecking Crew. I guess he was the leader. He wasn't the one that was masked. I still think that is her date. One of the 4 dates that she went on. But we'll put him aside because he doesn't factor into this episode that we see. But this is the leader of the Wrecking Crew. Jen immediately gets triggered by that. I mean, talk about triggered. Blonsky just tells her to be calm, but she can't. So she does a 4th wall break, right? Because the guy's wearing like all white. He's got a towel on him. He said he just came out of the sweat lodge and everything. You might not know him because it was kind of very brief in episode 2, 3. It was very brief. And, we didn't focus on him too long. And he's dressed completely different. So here comes a 4th wall break that's cool because it's a 4th wall break, but also it's what Jennifer does that makes it even funnier. And it's also because it's a callback to how she would sometimes do fourth wall breaks in the comic book Saga, but it would also like transcend the story itself. So she's not just talking to us, the audience, with a standard fourth wall break. In the comic, she could be walking through panels. She could be ripping the comic aside to go scold, the writers, um, all sorts of stuff. Here, what she's doing is it's not just a fourth wall break where she's talking to us. She starts off by saying, "Not that guy." Then she goes to us just conversationally. Tell me that they've previously oned him. So, like, they did do the previous on at the beginning of this episode, as they typically did since the first one dropped, since after the first one dropped, but they didn't show him per se. But then she's like, "No, wait, let me do it." And then she shouts aloud, "Previously on," and then they do, the scene goes to black. You see the white lettering, "Previously on." I was laughing. I was like, I can't believe they made her do that. And then we transition to the scene where she's being attacked by the wrecking crew. And he's the guy, I guess he's the leader. And he says, if you're going to be strutting around flaunting your powers, you need to back it up. And that's what got everyone fighting. So then we're back to Blonsky's, counseling cabin. The previously on scene is over. And she hulks out, grabs him, and throws him into a stack of folding chairs in a corner. So then, even though Jen explains to the room why she got pissed and did what she did, I've been attacked by this guy and his friends, to the back of my apartment in the past. Give me a break. That's why I'm mad. That's why I did what I did. Blonsky just calmly directs her to go sit in what he calls the calming chair. And he points to it. It's like this, stuffed, comfy chair. And everyone's all, "Ooh," like she's being sent to the corner because she's been bad. So, and Jen's like, "You know what? Fine. I'll go sit there. And as soon as I'm out of there, I'm going to rip this guy to shreds." And he's like behind his sweat lodge towel. And Blonsky's all, "That's not how we work out our issues around here." And then Manbull just invites her to the circle. She sits down, and the wrecking crew guy gets up, and he's all super calm too. Blonsky's rubbing off on all these guys. Maybe at least he's legit on the surface. He's still doing legit work, right? So the wrecking crew guy is like, "Listen, I'm all for it. Join the circle. I'd love to work through our issues in here if you'll let me." He comes across very sincere, and Jen's like, "All right." So now they're all in the circle, and this dude's like, "So I realized that the real strength comes from facing yourself in the mirror and saying, 'Hey man, I'm going to work on me. I didn't need a magic crowbar.'" Remember they joked how they stole stuff from New Asgard? They had a magic crowbar from like a construction scene to go attack her. He goes, "I didn't need a magic crowbar to give me a sense of power." Which is kind of funny, but it's also kind of true. Like, we don't need the outside accoutrement to like be strong within ourselves, right? So he goes, "All that did was make me and my boys roll up on you like we were idiots, like we were super villains or something." And Jennifer's like, "You attacked a woman, 4 men on 1 woman. You absolutely were super villains. Don't give yourself like that big a pass," she's saying. And then he's like, "I hear you, Jen, and I take radical responsibility, radical accountability for my actions. And I'm really, really sorry." And Jen's sarcastic and like such a breakthrough. And then Blonsky kind of shuts her down, and he's like, "This guy's trying to like, reach you. Relax." And then she tries to assure everyone that she's fine. She doesn't need any of this stuff. And everyone else is laughing because they all were at a point very clearly in the past where they thought they didn't need that stuff either. And so then Blonsky's like, "Listen, everybody else here has shared. Is there anything that you want to get off your chest?" Now, at this point, if you've seen the episode already, you tell me in the comments below, live or on the replay, even replay comments. I'd love to see them. And I'll comment back. If I catch them, I'll comment back. I usually do. I was kind of worried that maybe Blonsky really is somehow secretly the big bad, and he's going to try and get her to be vulnerable and say things that will trip herself up later. So I was kind of like holding my breath, like I'm not sure that I want her to do it. Or who in this circle is end up going to want to turn on her and take anything that she shares in here in a moment of vulnerability and go hang her with it later. There's a lot of risk here for her to do that. So Blonsky calls her out when she's like, I don't want to, I don't have to. He's like, listen, you're glued to that thing, her phone. He doesn't know why, but in one sense, as a coach, it doesn't matter. She's addicted to something that isn't something external that's going on in her life, and she's not doing the internal work that she needs to do. Now, why this is so important in terms of the overall storytelling for this episode, folks, is because, and I've said this on a bunch of replays before, you are more than welcome to catch up on those where we really do some deep dives, and some of us are talking amongst each other. Sometimes the comments during the live disappear, so I'll narrate them. You'll catch the flavor. Everybody gets the fact that this isn't the typical character arc that a superhero will go on. She doesn't get her powers as She-Hulk and fights the fact that she's got the powers per se. There is no fear or loathing of herself just because she's got these powers. She's not a stranger in a strange land. Her cousin Bruce, in a very interconnected family, has already gone through this. So even her family, to a degree, her father Morris says it very well in the first episode. He's like, we've been through this before. We all know what this is like. So this is not the typical superhero journey. And not everything's going to be Hulk smash for her to get through the second of the two heroes' journeys that a Joseph Campbell-esque superhero can go through. So Blonsky's actually helping her to wrap up that second journey because she's been fighting, really focusing on it along the way. She's complained about it. She's been trying to put She-Hulk in a box, but I'll use her when I'll use her. She'd rather everybody just love her for Jen and kind of forget about that She-Hulk thing. She was complaining about her boss asking her to stay in She-Hulk form at work. She's leading the superhuman law division. He even tells her it's to make other superpowered humans feel more comfortable when they come to you and or when you're leading this division. He's not wrong. No one's been wrong in terms of asking her to embrace both sides of herself. And there are certain points in time where maybe She-Hulk's more appropriate versus times that maybe Jen is more appropriate. So she opens up to the circle finally about Josh and how they met. They went on a few dates. Things seem to be going great. Now he's ghosted her. They end up using the term on her to say, as men, because she's the only female there, as men, they understand, they recognize what he did. He ghosted her. And until we get to the very end of this episode, we're like, was it just that or was there more? So she says, I can't stop thinking about it. You're right. I am obsessed about it. Then they're like, well, what did he last text you? Because they're trying to figure it out with her and give her a man's perspective. When she reads, that was fun. I just can't stop smiling. It's the porcupine who says it first. He's like, ew, he's all thirsty. And it's a cliche. He definitely ghosted you. And she admits that what she ended up texting him back, she didn't do it right away. She did delete. And for a time, she was fine. What happened off camera that now she's pulling in and admitting to now is that at some point down the line, she texted, hey, are you okay? I'm just getting a little worried. Blushing smile emoji, she adds. And all the men are like, no, you were doing fine. And then you made it worse. So Manbull tells her it's a really bad look. And she's like, I don't need you to point out my obvious mistakes, Manbull. I've got my mom for that. So remember episode 1 where her mother is just like, thanks for the pie, but don't you eat it, you're fat, like the mother's just flicking that chip off her shoulder and has clearly been doing it long before She-Hulk factors in, right? So that they're like, you really have to consider the very real possibility that you were ghosted, and this is how you need to handle it from a man's perspective. But of course the vampire's like, or he wanted your blood, and everyone's like, no. So here's where the character journey gets nuanced and wrapped up very well. Oh, Rami, I'm sorry. I just saw your comment now. Yes, I kept thinking that any one or all of them were going to pounce on her at any moment. I think all of this was well played, and I think that without anyone having to be too obvious or overact, like I was wondering if the humanoids were really in danger too from the vampire being there. I thought the leader of the wrecking crew was going to get attacked by Sarensen, um, uh, or whatever the guy's name was. Again, this is the first time I'm watching it. So I was worried for the human that the vampire was going to attack him at one point if he got pissed. Like, I was really afraid they were going to pounce on one another and just rip the whole building down. I didn't know. But what Jen says next is really important because this is where she's truly vulnerable about them. We get an encapsulation about that second hero's journey that she's been on the entire time. And what everybody says to her collectively that helps her to heal from whatever rift is going on inside of her. This is a very powerful moment. And it's going to help her because now that the second journey ends up getting wrapped up, she's ready for the last two episodes where it's going to get full on, like, you know, big bad and attacks and everything. If she was still internally conflicted, she might not do as well as she needs to do in the next two episodes. So I'm kind of glad they dealt with this now. She confesses to the group, I met him, meaning Josh, when I was Jen, and he liked Jen. He specifically didn't ask about She-Hulk. You know, in high school when you had that friend that was like, you know, cooler than you are, like more attractive and athletic, and they get all the attention from everyone, right? Then she gestures at herself. Hello, like meaning this is who I am now in the She-Hulk form. But as Jen growing up, I was that person that, you know, people wanted to be friends with, but I was never the center of attention. She goes, you think that life would be so much easier if I were that person, the one that gets all the attention, has all the talents, right? And I can turn into that person anytime I want to. And everyone pays attention to her, right? She-Hulk's powerful, folks. There's no doubting about that. She goes, and everybody pays attention then. My colleagues, my boss, guys, but it feels like cheating. This is the crux of Jen's axe to grind about being a She-Hulk. It's really nothing else, but this is still powerful. It feels like cheating, she says, because would they like me if I didn't have all this? Like if I were just Jen. Remember last episode, it was about just Jen. The bride just wants her to be just Jen. If I were just Jen, would the same guys that like She-Hulk stick around for Jen? Because some don't. And we've seen that happen. And that sucks for Jen because Jen is great and no one cares when there's She-Hulk. So I meet this guy, Josh, that likes Jen. And that felt good to know that, you know? And then he ghosts me and it sucks because now she doesn't have that person who, if Josh had stayed with her, would have served as a nice hedge against everything else personally and professionally that goes on. So if she feels like she's cheating when she's She-Hulk, but like she acknowledges that there's, you know, uses for She-Hulk, no wonder she wants to kind of put her in a corner and put her in a box, even at times where, you know, maybe she shouldn't be put in a box. There's a time for Jen, as the story has kind of told us along the way, and there's a time for She-Hulk. Now, if you just like your things two-dimensional in Superheroville, where everybody just does this all the time, and it's like who's better, who's funnier, okay, and there's plenty of that that's going to be on tap as we go into phases 5 and 6, right? But here you have nuanced storytelling where She can do all that. But she's got to deal with this sense that She-Hulk is a cheat. And so even if she's going to use She-Hulk appropriately, I don't think she's ever abused her powers as She-Hulk. Have you? She needs to not have that dirty feeling about it. So Porcupine's knee-jerk reaction is, who is this guy? We've got to kill him. And the others join in. And Blonsky's like, no, please no. Now, Blonsky was like, let's go get him. That would have been too two-dimensional, right? So the ex-leader of the directing crew is like, wait. That's our knee-jerk reaction normally. Jen is hurting, and we need to be there for her, and all we can offer her right now is violence. So it's showing that what Blonsky's teaching, you're still going to have your knee-jerk reactions if you go to a therapist, you go to a psychiatrist, you go to a life coach, you're going to have the knee-jerk reactions where you just want to go back and do the bad behavior. But between Blonsky and the ex-leader of the wrecking crew, they redirect everybody back. And Blonsky nods and says, listen, does anyone think that they can speak to Jen's pain using the tools that we've learned in the group, which is clearly not violence? And then Porcupine dials it back and reconciles and says, well, for one thing, you can't control what other people are going to do. And this is true in a relationship. This is also true just in life in general, even if you're not a superpowered human being. So this is a very potent thing for some people watching this episode to learn themselves. Then Alejandro, the matador, says, it hurts when someone rejects us because it reminds us of the times that we reject ourselves. Not only is this very true in evolved thinking, and it shows that Blonsky's doing a really good job with these people, but this also speaks directly to the character arc that Jen's been on with that second hero's journey, the internal one only. Jen has felt rejected even worse by people rejecting her, either as Jen or the Hulk, but mostly as Jen. Remember, in episode 1, some of the biggest critics of episode 1 said, she leaned into those powers way too quickly, and she's either better than Bruce at some things, or she's just as good for having just gotten her powers. That's not where her struggle was. Her struggle was, really, I want to keep the life I've always built because I love and respect that. I don't want my best laid plans rerouted. And then when you get into episode 2, she starts to feel that directly and or indirectly, people are rejecting her as Jennifer Walters, that only She-Hulk really matters at the end of the day. So when she gets rejected, whether it's in a dating situation or she feels like it's a rejection by her boss, even though he explains to her his strategy, which is legit as a rainmaker and an equity partner in a business. A couple of episodes, I defended him. She feels like it's a rejection of her as a human, that she can't just be at work in human form, and shift in and out of She-Hulk if she needs to. She feels like that's a rejection. Barely anybody wanted to date her when she wasn't She-Hulk on Matcher. And the one guy that showed up was like, she's a 6 as he walks off. And he clearly doesn't care about her, and then even when she dates people as She-Hulk, they're still rejecting her. Remember what Mallory Book said at one point. She said, some of these guys, they're priceless. They think that just because they have an internet connection, you're still lucky to date them. And you're She-Hulk. And then you're a brilliant human attorney too. Like, ridiculous. So she's gotten rejected a lot. So then the wrecking crew leader adds, maybe this Josh doesn't hurt so much because he wasn't spending time with Jen. The vampire's like, that's a shame because I bet Jen is pretty damn great. And Jen smiles. And then the vampire, of course, has to say, and tasty. And then Jen stops smiling. He's like, I went off the rails. Somebody bails me out. Somebody bail me out. So Manbull says, maybe, just maybe, this Josh isn't the only guy that likes Jen Walters. Maybe there's a group of guys that would like to spend time with Jen right now, at least as friends, right? So then Jen's flattered and she feels a sense of acceptance because they're on kind of a similar journey as her in one sense, that they have to reconcile superpowered me versus non-superpowered me. Um, so Blonsky then asks, okay, so Jen, do you genuinely believe that this group values the whole of you? This was important for him to ask for two reasons. One, as a life coach, yes, he wants her to feel integrated with the group so that she can benefit and everybody else can benefit as they work on things together. But it's also important because at this point, as she says, yes, I do genuinely believe that this group values the whole of me, you can also see as she pauses and she's working through it, she's finally accepting the whole of her as well. The sum total of all her parts, superpowered and not. And again, the next two episodes are all going to be about the outer exterior journey of the hero, the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So it's a good thing she at least has this now part of the firm foundation that she has set, because the next two episodes are going to shake her to her core. If we're following the Joseph Campbell exterior journey that the character goes on, you're going to get the darkness before the dawn in the next episode. And in fact, the way this episode left off, you already know she's there. And then they're just going to make it worse. So everybody's very supportive of her. She admits she feels really good for that. And that her vulnerability and her feeling healed gets Porcupine to finally remove his mask, because it's been made clear he doesn't want to take any of his costume off. But apparently he's never been out of the suit because there's a stench when he does that. And Blonsky respectfully asks if he could put the mask back on, but to get the suit properly dry clean so he can come out of it next time. So that's responsible for him as a life coach and a leader to do. Then the wrecking crew leader says, if Josh isn't spending time with Jen, then Jen doesn't need to be spending time on Josh. So not only with him physically, but on him mentally and emotionally. And everyone cheers on for her to delete the conversation that she had, the text thread that she had with Josh. To really say I'm over it and it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to replay what he texted and what I texted and what he did and what I did. You've accepted the whole of yourself. You know better now. Don't have a crutch to backslide on. They're right for asking her to delete that conversation. It no longer serves her. And she does it, and they reward her with more cheers. And then Blonsky asks her how she feels. And she goes, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm hurting for a yurtin, meaning she wants to go out to the yurt and out to the sweat lodge. And they cheer her on, and she's actually in there. And when she comes out, she gives them the thumbs up. She doesn't mind spending that time focusing on just herself. We don't know what, if any, additional work she did in there, or is she just still working on doing a deeper dive on accepting the totality of herself? But when she comes out, she's like, it was good work, and they're really happy. So the tow truck's there in the next scene. She's going to go. The group made her a card. How sweet. She's got new friends, and she reads the card, and it says, we love Jen and She-Hulk. Okay, further driving home, we love all of you. You love all of you. Love the gang. And then Blonsky's like, okay, literally not a gang, because I don't. Please make sure that you make that clear to the parole board if they ever see that card. And she goes, you stay out of trouble. He goes, you too, darling. And Jen, next time you think of Josh, remember everyone you meet, no matter how much they hurt you, is a lesson learned. And I think that it made me like mist over. My eyes just got teary because he's right. So even if he ends up being kind of like a bit of a jerk with a candy-coated shell of trying to be better, they've really fleshed out the Abomination, and he was the mentor that she needed in this moment to help her level up so that she's ready for the next challenge that comes. And that's something that all of us can tell ourselves. No matter how much anyone in life hurts you, it's a lesson learned. You have to take that lesson, learn from it, and progress, of course, because you will just keep repeating the lesson over and over again until you learn, personally, professionally, however. So we see as the audience, as the tow truck leaves, Jen smiling confidently, sunshine streaming in the cab. She's riding up front with the cab, in the cab with the driver, of course. And this music is playing about how, like, one is over someone from a breakup. So she's moving on, but the screen goes black and it says 3 days earlier. So we go back to Thursday night where Josh and Jen are kissing, and Jen lets him into the apartment for the first time, and he ends up sleeping over. So now we see Jen sleeping in the darkness. I guess it's not Saturday yet or whatever. Josh sits at the end of the bed and gets dressed. Now, listen, we saw from the first go round, the first viewing of this, that he didn't stay to wake up with her in the morning. And that didn't necessarily mean something bad. He just didn't stay. So now he's getting dressed, but something's going on with her phone, or a phone on the table, and it shows that it's being hacked. It's all code. And the word at the top clearly says copying. So just in case you weren't sure, as the audience member, as a viewer, they're confirming her phone's being cloned. So we knew it, right? We knew that this was going to happen. Josh was way too good to be true, which kind of makes it even more heartbreaking. I wonder what happens to her internal character journey once she realizes that it's not just a matter of Josh like dating her and ghosting her, and that can happen. Like, she's accepted all of that as she accepts the totality of herself. But the concern that one might have at this point is now she goes totally toxic and can't trust anybody ever again. Which you kind of couldn't blame her. So the internal journey isn't completely healed, but there's been an evolution. The external journey, I'm sure, is going to be in the driver's seat for the last 2 episodes of the season. This is bad enough. He goes and walks around to take a picture of her asleep. And then we see the whole king symbol appear, showing us that. And I'm not sure, you guys tell me both live and on the replay what you thought of this. I mean, it's very clear that hulking is now a part of all this. And there's emojis being texted that shows that, there's an injection and a thumbs up about a blood sample. I don't know if he took the blood sample. I don't know if he cloned her phone and the conditions are now appropriate for them to know everything about her, where to track her. I'm sure her phone is now, they know where she's going at all times. So if a blood sample wasn't taken somehow while she's sleeping, they're all set to have a blood sample taken of her. The other thing is, I'm going to guess, you tell me what you think, he was texting to whomever the whole king is, who I think is the leader. I don't think Josh is whole king, telling somebody else, hey, now we can get the blood sample. But I'm not 100% sure. You guys tell me what you think, both live and on the replay in the comments below, because I'm just curious. I know definitely they're in pole position to get that blood sample from her. So I'm sure that's part of the whole dark before the dawn part of the hero's journey that has to take place over the last 2 episodes. So then we go off into the credit scenes. You've got the Matador wearing a JV jacket. He said he was doing matadoring in college, which of course re-triggered the man bull at one point. So you can see that actually was true. You've got Jen sweating it out with a group of new friends, in the sweat lodge. Porcupine still has some cartoon stench coming from him, and Man Bull's nostrils are flared because he's part animal, so he's going to really be sensitive to the stench. Then you've got another scene of Porcupine turning in his suit to be dry cleaned as Blonsky asked, but he's still got the mask on as he does it, which kind of says, okay, he's progressing, but he's still not 100% ready to be vulnerable. He can't quite get all the way there yet. And the only other thing that I will say at this point is I'm a little, disappointed that there wasn't a post-credit scene, because again, it was my recollection, and I've said this on live streams before, with the audience. We were supposed to get a post-credit scene, if I'm not mistaken, every single one of the 9 episodes that we were getting. That was one of the cool parts about She-Hulk. And I do think that they were tying her in with other things because, again, we know she's with the Avengers. So, she's going to be in, I'm very sure, Kang Dynasty. And I know, um, I know Secret Wars. She's also for a time been a member of the Fantastic Four. We know they're coming out in 2024. That movie's supposed to be. So we know that the leader is the big bad of Captain America 4. So I'm guessing she's going to play into that or cross over into that. And this was the 3rd week in a row where we did not have a post-credit scene. So I'm wondering how much stuff is being rewritten and reshuffled around, and they just had to pull certain things. Rami says, the lack of post credits is alarming. I agree. Oh, wait. And then to go back, he says, absolutely, they took a sample. Okay. And maybe that's how Murdoch gets involved. If they stick to this being a legal show, they might have Matt helping her. And you know what, Rami? I think that that's very smart because let's not forget that, Daredevil is a lawyer by day, Matt Murdoch by day. And then he's a superhero by night, which he's a vigilante, so he's trying not to have everyone connect one identity with the other. She-Hulk, almost off the jump, that's not been the case with her. And I think that they have been friends in the comics for years. I think that this is going to be a friendship that's going to carry through. So I also wonder, since there's going to be so many episodes of, and I love it, of Daredevil Born Again, it's coming out in a year from now. I think that she's going to show up there, even if it's in a post-credit scene or something, or even in one case where they're working on it. They don't have to be. It depends on how his legal career is going to continue to go in the MCU. In the comic book Saga, he went from criminal to more civil, and he could do criminal defense. Was he working with the DA's office, like when he was prosecuting Steve Rogers for a pre-Captain America alleged offense and death? And then She-Hulk defended him. That was during the Dan Slott run, if I'm not mistaken, and that was really good writing. I do think that there is a very strong possibility, I agree with Rami, that we're going to see some courtroom action between the two of them. But if you're not, if you're a layperson, you might not realize they can be co-defendants. They can be representing co-defendants and be on the same team. They can be representing co-plaintiffs and merge different complaints to be on the same team. There could be a potential conflict of interest. So off the jump, you can have them represent co-plaintiffs with one complaint. I have seen through 23 years of practice almost that sometimes complaints can be joined or merged. If a judge is like, hey, it's too confusing. I know there's different fact patterns and different parties claiming different things. So we don't have to merge them necessarily into all one mass omnibus lawsuit. We can join the lawsuits together so that they still have separate but yet interrelated entities. And why a judge would do that as a quick aside, because you're like, well, then why wouldn't a judge just merge everything into one massive complaint or action? Because there may be enough to keep things separate, but we'll join them together for purposes of discovery and then trial. Or maybe for purposes of discovery, and then we have joint trials. Being a lawyer is a lot harder than people think. But so in a courtroom, the whole point that I'm making is that in a courtroom, Matt Murdock and Jennifer Walters do not have to always be on opposing sides. And Matt Murdock, part of his journey, I may, if we get a lull, go back and watch all the Daredevil episodes that are now being brought in as kind of mostly canon to the MCU and break down the journey that they've had him go through in the show versus the comics, because he had a very complicated journey as a lawyer. Is he a lawyer? Is he just going to stick with vigilante? Is he going to be a lawyer and I don't want to be the vigilante anymore? I deny it. Is he with Foggy Nelson in a practice? Is he not? Is he really a good and an effective lawyer? Is he fit for representing clients? Is he not? His journey has been a lot more complicated as a professional than Jennifer Walters in the comic book saga. And that's one of the pre-edited videos that I did before the season started. And you can find that both live and on the replay in the first pinned comment. I have 2 videos now that do a point counterpoint between Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock. And one of them is who's the better lawyer. In the comic book saga, you didn't have the show drop yet. Rami says, I think She-Hulk will overpower her opponent legally with some added fight scenes for show. How do you think Titania's story will conclude? So, that's a really great question. Titania and She-Hulk, for those that don't know or aren't sure, in the comic book saga, they're just arch enemies really the whole time. But I think, and we talked about this the last episode, last week's reaction for episode 6. I said at one point, as they got into their fight scene and during the fight scene, I think that Titania has a respect for She-Hulk and has a little bit of scruples because she didn't just squash Jennifer Walters. She wasn't really interested in fighting Jennifer. So when Jennifer was like, I didn't take her by myself because she's all drunk, Titania's like, oh, this is sad and I don't want to do it. If Titania were nothing but bloodthirsty, she'd have ripped Jennifer's head off and played basketball with it before she could turn into the Hulk. She wanted a fair fight. Titania in the comics, I'm not 100% sure that she would care that much about it. Here they've really made her a nuanced person that has quite a bit of self-respect because she's a beloved influencer. Part of Titania's comic book backstory was that, she went to Dr. Doom in Secret Wars, the original version, because she wanted powers just so bad and she was willing to serve him if he did it, and he gave her powers. And she kind of had her own little internal struggle about trying to disassociate herself from the twerpy little blonde girl that she used to be. This Titania's backstory isn't just different. I like it because she's been her own agent, has had no problem with that. And you could see when she and Jennifer started to fight one another, there were very quick blink and you miss it kind of expressions on their faces that they dug fighting each other. And that there was kind of like a mutual self-respect. So for for season 1, I wonder if, depending upon just how sideways things go in the last 2 episodes, if we see Titania again, I wonder if Titania doesn't, because of the greater good or whatever, she doesn't help She-Hulk a little, but then be like, you owe me, hater. And then it's just like this grudge match that just continues, where like, who's the better female and who should be the better influencer, whether they mean to be or not. I kind of like what they've done with the storytelling for her. So what other observations does anybody have, live or on the replay? The channel's been kind of quiet because I am a lawyer. I am self-employed. So I take on projects from other law offices and stuff. And then I have a couple of clients that may or may not need work from me from day to day. I'm all virtual now. I used to be out in the court system, but I'm immunosuppressed. So since 2017, I've been practicing from home, and that's it. Still plenty of work to do. So some weeks are heavier than others. I've had all the best of intentions to put out a couple of videos that are still on tap. Oh, but first, I have to put out a video responding to the last edited video that, as luck would have it, I put out that was about Wolverine and the fact that Hugh Jackman is like, nah, I cannot play him full bore anymore. And that at most my thought was, okay, maybe in Secret Wars or whatever, at some point during the multiverse saga, we'd have him come out, Hugh Jackman come out as Wolverine for a quick scene or something like that. Kind of like fan service, kind of like what they did with Jonathan Krasinski being Mr. Fantastic as, part of the Illuminati, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That I definitely saw there being a possibility of happening, and that may still happen anyway. But of course, what, 1, 2, 3 days after I published that video, you've got Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman coming out together and saying, "Oh yeah, Deadpool 3, I'm going to be definitely a big part of that." So now I have to do a response video to my own video where I was like, at best, you were going to get a quick fan servicey kind of cameo, which again, I don't think is off the table. But now I have to respond to, all these, and it has been years, because the movie Logan, not to be spoilery about that, but the overall like cinematic ending of Logan's life, it's a good way to leave that character, how that happened. I know that in Marvel Comics, it's like a soap opera. Nobody's dead for long, right? I mean, they've killed off Colossus, who is one of my favorite characters, at least twice. They can kill off other characters and bring them back one way or another, even without a multiverse saga way to do it. Oh, Rami says the timing of Hugh's announcement in your video was too good. I'm thrilled about it, even the open mouth insert foot, folks. But if you read the comments on that video, everybody, including Chillmonger, definitely check his channel out. He's awesome. Chillmonger and I were totally in agreement that at best a fan servicey camo would be great. But we just did not see. I mean, Hugh Jackman's basically my age. We're in our 50s. He has said in interviews over the last 2 years or so, especially, I just don't see ruining the character arc that we ended for Logan. I just don't see myself putting myself through the hardcore, rigorous training that I had to do to bulk up for that character, because that was legitimately, I mean, minus the claws, of course, that was legitimately his body. And then for certain scenes where he had to like have his shirt off, and like you really had to focus on like his shoulders to his abs, he cut weight for that. And that's excruciating on its own. So for him doing that when he is in like his late 20s, 30s, even super early 40s is pushing it. I'm like gonna be 52 soon. I gotta tell you, wouldn't relish doing what he's doing or what he's gonna have to do for something that's more than a quick cameo, and maybe being an X-suit, they can get away with it. For him to really have a place in Deadpool 3, we know he's not going to do a cameo in it. He's in that movie, like in that movie. He's going to have to go back to all those things that 20 years later is not going to feel like a treat. So that is somebody who's really committed to the process. And I have to say, Hugh Jackman, fellow Gen X member, hats off, dude. Hats way off. Woo! Rami says, I know it's a reach, but it's an interesting take on where things are going. Speaking of Logan, do you think that movie might be canon to the MCU now? What if there's a possible reality past Secret Wars? Rami is so good at this stuff. I think that, anything's possible. My one concern about that, go watch if you haven't already. I know Rami watched that video. I know Chillmonger did. I don't know if Trinity Second Street Marvel does. Usually he'll comment on my stuff when he sees it. I said that I tended to believe, first of all, I think, so Ryan Reynolds' channel, I think, has 2 videos that came up that were really quick. One where they did the announcement, that has been very trailery, and you've seen it. You may or may not have seen the second video where he and Hugh Jackman are just seated on the couch, and they're just addressing the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Logan's, again, spoilers on everything. This is spoiler city here. Logan's dead. So like, how could he be in Deadpool 3 unless it's just a flashback? Like, he's in this movie full bore. So how does that happen? They start to explain it, and of course they drown it out with music. So I think, what are they doing there besides just pulling your leg and being funny. I do think that there will be an explanation. If you ask me right now, my best explanation is that where this happens in the overarching MCU timeline, Logan didn't die yet. Do I think Logan's going to be pulled in as canon? Kind of in the way that they said that Deadpool, all the episodes from like the Netflix series is kind of canon, kind of not. I think Logan's going to be the same thing, kind of canon, kind of not. So his biological offshoot, the daughter, so to speak, I think she's going to factor in and probably be part of the X-Men, or they're going to call them the mutants because they want a gender neutral title, and I get that. But do I think that they're going to continue the character in a Secret War sort of way? There really are the two main possibilities, that you have a Wolverine in another universe, and post Secret Wars and the incursions and kind of setting everything straight, there will be a Wolverine for the mutants. I know that there will be. Hugh Jackman as a mutant, as Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. That's going to be the permanent Wolverine for Earth 616 or the main MCU. Dude, he's in his 50s like I am. That's really a rough sell, because I'm imagining that they have like a 20-year plan for this. I know it's way more than a 10-year plan, right? I know they've announced things out to 2024 or 25 or whatever, and that's all nice. But they're going to go way more than that. This is one of the most successful movie franchises ever, ever, ever. It's a towering achievement, and now it's on multiple platforms, and it's still woven in together. I think that Phase 4, there was a lot of table setting, and I think it's necessary because Miss Marvel is going to be huge going forward. And I have movies. I have videos explaining why they had to set her up and why we spent all this time with her. And it's going to go way past the Marvels movie. That's, if you think like she's going to kind of somehow diminish as a character, Miss Marvel or Kamala Khan, that's two-dimensional chess. I see her being huge all the way through the next couple of phases. You're meant to want to take this ride with her and be morally and intellectually and emotionally invested in her. If you're not in Captain Marvel, that's one thing. But with Miss Marvel, they definitely wanted you to understand her and her family's backstory, because even with her family, that could get to be a little more complex. Not Fantastic Four level kind of family, but if you know, right? So Rami says, what if Hugh's Wolverine exists in a universe that gets destroyed by an incursion, but Deadpool and in the end escapes to the 616 universe? I'm spinning so many theories, and that would be Hugh's final time as Wolverine. You could have nailed that on the head. It's not like, I'm not just saying that, Rami. You're really good at spotting all of the different threads in the web here. That could be, right? Because the incursions were introduced, and it's not just going to be something that Doctor Strange and Clea go to handle in the next Doctor Strange movie. It's going to be part of the whole. If you know the Secret War story, you can see how the incursions will fit into that and will become more of a thing. And I'm sure Kang's just going to make things worse with messing up of all the timelines and stuff. I bet you that's birthing some incursion sort of stuff too on its own. Or if it's not, it's already weakening the fabric of reality, and then incursions are just destroying all these different realities. So everything's getting destroyed from two different directions, even if one isn't directly making the other one worse. So that could be the way that you kill off Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and or you just, his timeline continues to run out, and how Logan ends up in the movie Logan. That's great. And how Professor X ends up in that version of Logan remains the same. It could be. It could definitely be. And I respect that theory. I think it's a very sound one. But I do not. In a way, it'd be fun to be wrong. But I do not imagine that in his 50s, Hugh Jackman is going to pull a Jack LaLanne. If you don't know who that is, go Google it. The guy was 80 something years old, Jack LaLanne was. He was a huge fitness expert, and he took really good care of his body. And of course, and he ended up hauling like a tugboat by a chain, swimming through the ocean, or like a line of, not a tugboat, but a line of like boats at 80 or whatever, and he's swimming and he's pulling them all himself. Like, I think Hugh Jackman's awesome, but I cannot imagine he's going to be able to continue to pull off Wolverine himself as the main Earth 616 Wolverine. Like, it'd be great, but we're not all Jack LaLanne is my point. He's going to be 60s, 70s, 80s still playing Wolverine? I don't think so. So I think that all the different other folks that have been rumored to be either in talks or in the mix, or fans are causing the casting department to look at other people more for Wolverine, I think all that talk is pretty true. And I think they're going to get a younger version of Wolverine. I think they have to. Yeah. I think they have to, because that's just, it's a lot for somebody who's in their 20s, 30s to bulk up like that, cut weight for certain scenes to make it even more impactful. I mean, I kind of like his commitment to his craft. I know they could CGI things, but you know, an actor should be more committed to their craft, whether they're a method actor or not. And then that saves money in the budget for CGI elsewhere. My God. So we'll, you know, Hugh Jackman will always be like the Wolverine to me. I trust what Marvel Studios and their casting department has done all the way along. Whether certain characters are your favorite or not, the actors that they pick to depict these people are spot on, like every single time. I was very critical initially when I heard that Josh Brolin was not only playing Thanos, but that he was going to play Cable. I was like, oh, come on, that's lazy. My goodness. I know they might. But I swear, in Deadpool 2, when I saw Josh Brolin as Cable, I was like, I can't imagine anyone else as Cable. Oh my God. Oh my God. He is so Cable. Wow. I stand corrected, because I really thought that was going to be lazy and lame. I'm like, who is he related to in the casting department? Lenny Fiasco. Hey, what's up? He goes, I love the idea of timelines clashing. Come on, Avengers and Justice League. Oh, that would be too kind for the poor struggling DC universe. But it would not be bad. And if they could do the deals with Sony and then along the lines like take over Fox and stuff like that, I'm not saying you couldn't have a crossover that would be mutually beneficial, Lenny. I think you're very wise. I also think you're prescient. I see this happening at some point, but I also see it being, at least currently, more to Marvel's benefit than the DC EU. Snyder cut versus not Snyder cut versus, you know, I mean, that's, and then everything that happened with the cinematic version of the Flash. Oh my God. You know, and then being taken over by another company, and Batgirl is like seconds from coming out, and they're like, nah. Oh, shutting down so many things that may be very good business decisions, right? We don't have access to all their books and ledgers as a company. It's easy from the outside looking in to criticize certain moves that they may have to do to write off losses and live to fight another day to resurrect the DC universe there. Ooh, God. Rami says he was perfect as Cable. Oh my God, he was. Because honestly, I was like, who's he got in a relationship with? Who is he related to? Why is he getting two roles to play? Again, I thought that was lazy, and it totally wasn't. He blew my socks off. There can be no other Cable. Rami says, imagine the DCEU can reboot via Secret Wars by having a couple of their characters hopping in for a cameo. They wish. And then again, I can't rule that out. But again, they better be in a position to pay Marvel handsomely, because Marvel doesn't need them. They're trying to copy the Marvel model, which again, I'm not going to criticize them for. One thing that entrepreneurs should do is to see what's working for an ideal customer base. Go see the Stacey Storino channel for more details. What's up, Trinity? I was just talking about you before in a good way. All good things, all good things. So if definitely look at that. I also mentioned Joe's Dairy Bar YouTube channel. I did associate both those channels with my channel before we talked more about like why the milkshake and the french fries thing sounds gross maybe, but like you never know. And Joe's Dairy Bar and Grill started off as one of my first content marketing clients. They've gone on to become a seven-figure business year over year for the last several years, and they are a legit TikTok influencer at over, last I checked, 820,000 fans or followers on TikTok. And even though they don't have quite 6,000 followers on Instagram, they make about $1,000 a week in the DMs just on Instagram alone, and about as much on Facebook. Facebook isn't dead if you know how to leverage your clientele there. Uh, you know, you do have to work harder and more often to get traction on Facebook. Same thing with YouTube. They're both very well established, very competitive niches. It does not mean that you can't do very well, and you don't have to have a huge following. You do have to have a legit community that wants whatever it is that you're selling. So by the same token, Joe's Dairy Bar anytime now is going to have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. But when we only had 100 a couple years ago, even those videos, I could just put them in an email, a link to that video, and whatever we highlighted would sell like crazy. So if you have a side hustle or a full-time job that's entrepreneurial, your own business, and you want to know how to make content marketing really work for you, no matter how big your community is or isn't, I know social proof is great, but still, definitely give the Stacey Storino channel out. And if you're a foodie, a look over. And that one's got over 1,600 subscribers on it. I've been a successful content marketing coach for years. So Second Street Marvel said, just got done watching the episode, getting ready for morning ride. I hope all is well. Definitely all is well. Definitely give Second Street Marvel or Trinity's channel a good look-see if you haven't already, and subscribe. I love the live breakdowns that gets done over there. The content is spot on. All right, so I do think that Trinity, like I said before, and you know this very well, the Joseph Campbell internal hero's journey is as roughly complete as it's going to be for season 1 of She-Hulk, and the last 2 episodes are going to be all about going the darkness before the dawn for the hero's journey. They're going to go to the lowest point and then come back up to hopefully end the season on a high note, which I guess they're going to do because this is a comedy, so I don't think they're going to end up all dark and like da-na-na-na, but I do think they're definitely going to lead into Captain America 4, because the leader is going to be involved, and I do think the leader is Hulk King. Just like back in the original Hulk movie where they were emailing back and forth. You didn't have all the social media and stuff like you do now. Now I think the leader's like gone along with the times. I think the leader's a driving force behind intelligentsia, and I do think that the leader and he's definitely leveraging the public's hatred of her to mobilize and weaponize them as necessary, and or to gain sympathy. So I haven't really dove deep on this, and it's something that, again, I'm a lawyer by day, and my practice has been a little busy as of late. So I can't put out all the edited videos I would like right now, but I'm hoping I can get back on track with that starting next week. But I'm good for at least once a week live stream with a replay, if not more. So again, no matter what, I can always do those. So this channel will continue to have content no matter what. And it didn't help that my video editor got married this week, so I couldn't have put out videos this week if I really wanted to. He's entitled to a honeymoon. But the leader, he's going into New World Order. He's the affirmed big bad of that movie. Does it not make sense? Speaking of the DC universe over there, does it not make sense that he kind of pulled what that dark version of the Riddler was, where he was getting sympathetic people through social media to come be part of his flash mob of evil, if you will? I think something similar is going to be done where, they may be starting off with hateful man babies, but as any platform continues to gain traction, it starts with its original ideal audience, and then it tends to spread and grow. Witness what happened with TikTok. I think the pandemic definitely helped speed it up, its growth and progression. Now I'm putting the Stacey Storino coaching hat on. I do think that the pandemic helped the growth and progression of TikTok by kind of putting something that was definitely growing like it was in a crock pot, and it threw it in the microwave, right? It skipped over the instant pot mode where it's going a little faster than a crock pot on high, but like, wow, and right now TikTok is no longer the sole province of children. Just as an aside, if you have a business or a side hustle or whatever, and your ideal customer is a millennial mom, because a lot of businesses, that is part of the makeup of their ideal customer avatar, that's still the biggest growing segment on TikTok right now. So if you're not putting out TikTok business related content, it's time to get on the stick with that there, buddy. And I definitely have playlists on the Stacey Storino channel that can help you out with that more. One of the videos that I did in 2020 has over 31,000 views on it. So, and even though I put a year on some of these things, like a lot of that information that I put on some of those videos that even go back 2 years is still evergreen and good now. All right, so the leader, I think, is trying to create their new world order and trying to sow seeds and grow crops of people that are going to be more supportive of him once he steps out of the shadows and into the light. And I don't think he's going to be in a place to do that without stealing more Hulk blood. So, he's been obsessed with Hulk blood for, easily a decade to 2 decades now. Why should he stop now, right? All right. So I'm going to have to put out a response video to my most recent edited video, Wolverine. We do have some really good comments on that. I think a lot of people agreed with my then sentiments about where I thought Hugh Jackman was or wasn't going in the Marvel universe. And I definitely have to put out a response video now that Ryan Reynolds put out 2 short videos about where Deadpool 3 is going. Those skunks. You could just say they offered Hugh Jackman so much money that he kind of couldn't say no about the Deadpool 3 project. Because I know for years he was like, no. And I think at one point Ryan Reynolds tweeted, "Oh, it's nice to see that Hugh isn't allergic anymore to selfish." Because he was like, "You're being selfish. Your fans want you. You should do what makes the fans happy." Wolverine made your career. But he was like, "Nah, I'm on to other things," which he's been. And I think where we left him with Logan is the appropriate ending of that character arc. I'm not sure I disagree for that version of Wolverine. I love Wolverine. We need more of him. But what I was saying and what I think Chillmonger said, Trinity, if you're still there, like, you probably don't disagree with either one of us. And now I have to do a retraction video because clearly Hugh Jackman is coming back. It could be because of money, which may mean that he's still not, allergic to selfish. How fun. So, all right, make sure you guys subscribe to my channels. I definitely will be putting out regular content here. I know Barney is going to be able to edit one video for me that'll go up on the Stacey Storino channel tomorrow, if all works well. And again, that's content marketing based. People seem to really like the marketing in a recession based economy stuff. So we'll have another follow-up video for that. If that benefits you or anybody else that you know, send them over there. And I will talk to you guys later. Have an awesome Thursday. Bye.